Welcome back to Ruins on a Hill Media, where neglected and forgotten truths are unearthed. So today's topic is essentially it's about change and the process of change. I'm going to use a metaphor. I've been using some metaphors lately that I really like, and I think you'll like this one too. Again, metaphors are just a way to kind of visualize things in a little bit different context to help bring about some new understanding. So I hope this accomplishes exactly that. Of course, when I think about change, I can't help but think about the movie What About Bob? If you've ever seen the movie, it is a hilarious movie, and one of the main characters in it writes a book called Baby Steps, and so people who've seen it will laugh at me for using this. But of course, when we think about change, we do have to think about small steps, and we do have to think about, the normal process. I mean, sometimes people change overnight, but it's not the typical thing. It's not common. One of my boys, when he was little, he was a thumb sucker. He sucked his thumb all the time. And according to the sonogram, I'm pretty sure he sucked his thumb even in the womb. So, I mean, think about the brain wiring that took place around that behavior. So I forget exactly how old he was. I think he was probably about 7 or 8 maybe. And one day he got a cut on the thumb that he would suck. So my wife put a Band-Aid on his thumb, and he didn't suck his thumb with the Band-Aid on it. When the Band-Aid came off, he no longer sucked his thumb. That was instant change, or basically for the length of time that the Band-Aid was on his finger, that's how quickly that old habit changed. So, but again, that's unusual and unexpected. I fully expected him to go back to the old behavior the moment that the Band-Aid came off. And so a lot of people beat themselves up for not changing as quickly as they would like. They kind of beat themselves up thinking that somehow they are inferior to other people in this area. But if people are honest, even the ones who act like they turned their life around in a heartbeat, the honest truth is that most people, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And then it takes a while to regain the ground that they had gained previously. So I think we understand intellectually that it's a process, but emotionally we shame ourselves and beat ourselves up a lot of times if we have to be one of those people who, for whom it requires a process, baby step process. And so, in the field of psychology, there's kind of a formal study of this, and typically it's referred to as the stages of change. And so, I work with kids as a therapist in a behavioral school, and 95% of these kids, 97% of them probably, they didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'd like to be in a professional counseling relationship with a therapist where I'm gonna identify my own therapy goals and start making commitments to working on these goals with my therapist." I mean, none of them do that. They're kids. So 97% of these kids are in what we would call a contemplative or a pre-contemplative phase of therapy. Pre-contemplative is they're not even thinking about therapy. They show up at school, and then we, as therapists, we'll pull them for an appointment, and they'll sit down with us, and maybe they'll even talk about their life and talk about stuff, maybe even some pretty important stuff, but in reality, they may not even be thinking about change at all. Then there's the contemplative stage, which is where the person is starting to think about the possibility of change and the possibility of working on some things, the possibility of getting help for some issues in their life. Some of the kids at the school are in the contemplative, usually, simply because they've been in the process for a while. And, there's a little bit more trust. There's a little bit more of a sense of reference to how, some kids have successfully left this school and I'm still here. And then they ask questions like, why did they get to leave and I didn't? So then we talk with them about that. And, well, this other kid made some changes, and maybe that gets them thinking, because it has to do with other kids making changes and not adults telling them to make changes. So anyway, those are the first two stages of change. And then, of course, the first stage of change is the first stage. That's where they're now actually engaging, but they're still identifying their issues. They're still trying to figure out what it is that they need help with, and they're trying to figure out how they can even participate in the process. The second stage has to do with, now they're actually identifying those issues, and they're playing an active role in that part of the process. And then, the next stage is the working phase, where, now they're actually working on some objectives and some bigger goals with their therapist. So anyway, all that just to say, there are stages. Not everyone is in the same place. And what I want to do now is share the metaphor with you and just draw some lessons from it. So I call this the I'm from Alaska metaphor, okay? Know it sounds weird, but hang in there with me. So, let's say this guy, he grows up in Alaska, and we're not talking about southern Alaska. We're talking about right in the middle of the state, right somewhere pretty cold. And he grows up in that environment. He grows up doing certain things because of that environment. He grows up not doing certain things because of that environment. And the things that he does and doesn't do become subconscious automatic behaviors, i.e. automatic decisions on a daily basis that he doesn't have to think about too much, really. Certain times of the year, certain things are done either in preparation for the bad winter or certainly in dealing with the winter itself, and that kind of thing. So this guy just goes about his day, right? Goes about his day year after year, becomes an adult, gets a job, for some company up there, and then one day, his supervisor just, says, hey, one of the vice presidents wants to talk to you. So they bring him in, and they say, yeah, we're double jumping you. You're going to promote up 2 or 3 notches here. We really like your work, and we see your education, all this stuff. So we have a position for you in Hawaii. If you'd like to go to Hawaii, we'd love to have you there as part of the team running the show there in Hawaii. And so, of course, the guy's like, yeah, of course I'll go to Hawaii and triple my pay and everything, absolutely. So, the day comes when he's getting on the plane, and of course, he says goodbye to everybody, and says all the normal things, keep in touch, blah blah blah. And then the day comes, he gets on the plane. Well, to get to the airport, he's got to go through frigid temperatures and snow and ice, so he's dressed appropriately. And he's never been on a plane before. He gets on the plane, and he sits down, puts his carry-on bag in the overhead, and a stewardess sees him there. After a little bit, he's still got his parka and his mittens. He's got his hood up, got his winter boots on. He's still decked out, she says, sir, if you'd like, feel free to take your coat off and put your stuff up in the compartment. It's a nice 72 degrees on the plane, so feel free to do that. And he says, oh, thank you, but I'm from Alaska, and this is how we dress in Alaska. So she politely, of course, okay, all right, thank you. Feel free to do that, but I can see that you're from Alaska. It's obvious, yes. So just wanted to let you know. He says thank you. But he keeps, he stays dressed the way he's dressed. And then the plane lands in Hawaii. And the door opens up. And it's hot out and humid. And so he gets off the plane and he's walking through the terminal with his parka and his mittens and everything. And people are looking at him like, what is going on here? And so he gets his baggage, he gets in the taxi. He decides first thing he's going to do is go to the work site and headquarters there in Hawaii and introduce himself to everybody. Of course, the taxi driver's looking at him funny, and he doesn't say anything, but he's sending some looks that say the same thing that the stewardess said. And the guy from Alaska, sees those looks, and even though he's starting to feel pretty hot, he's still thinking, well, I'm from Alaska, and this is how we dress in Alaska. And so gets to the work site, walks in. People are a little bit freaked out initially, like thinking, is this some kind of crazy person coming in here? Because they're all dressed for the weather. And with his hood on and his mittens, and he walks up to somebody and says, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm the new site supervisor here, and just want to say hello. So people kind of start walking over to him, and of course they're shaking his hand, but they're shaking his mitten because he's got his mittens on, and but trying to be polite. And he's doing a great job just as far as how he's talking to people, but man, it's really awkward. People are giving him looks and kind of standing off to the side looking at him sideways. So he goes into those offices, he's getting organized, and one of the people comes in and just in a real friendly way, hey, it's good to meet you and everything. By the way, there's a coat rack over here. If you want to hang up your stuff, feel free to do that. And he's like, oh, thank you. But I'm from Alaska. This is how we dress in Alaska. And they're like, okay, that's great. So yeah, just feel free if you want to. So he leaves there, comes back the next day, dressed in his parka and his mittens and his boots and scarf and everything. People were like really starting to feel uncomfortable for him and with him. Again, he's interacting pretty well, but now you can tell he's starting to get to him in his mood and in his demeanor. Everyone knows he's burning hot. And how it is, even with the air conditioning on, when you're in a tropical environment, the air conditioning doesn't feel quite as good as when you're in a temperate environment. And so people were doing their best to just do their work and work with him and get to know his expectations and everything. But he's starting to be a little bit short with people, a little bit abrupt, a little bit sassy. So another day goes by, and now he's just straight up, flat out, just barking at people and being rude and even like calling names and throwing out some put downs. And finally, one of the senior guys underneath him, or gals, catches him at a moment when he's just in his office, and they say, sir, I'm not trying to be in any way disrespectful, but I hope you can understand that when you came in the first day, everything was great, and we all felt just really good about meeting you and everything, but now we feel like we can't even really communicate, and we just get the impression that you're so uncomfortable with wearing the parka and stuff. I'm not disrespecting that you're from Alaska. We've heard that And we respect that. 100% respect that. But, we can't do our jobs. And we're honestly concerned that you're not able to really function the way that we're sure you would like to function as our supervisor. We would love to, really just move forward as a team. But sir, this situation is getting in the way. Would you please be willing, and we know you're from Alaska, but would you please be willing to at least maybe take the hood off and put it on the coat rack, and maybe you'll have a little bit of relief, and communication can be a little bit better. And so the guy's like, okay, I hear you. Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry I've put you guys through all this. I'm just so uncomfortable, putting aside the things that I got so comfortable with in Alaska. I mean, this is all I've ever known. And the employee is like, sir, I respect that too, and we all do, and, but, maybe little by little, we can teach you, some new things and how to survive in Hawaii, as far as the temperatures here, how to survive in this environment, but not only how to survive, but how to have fun and get along and live life. We all live life a little bit differently. Those who came from the mainland, we've had to learn how to live a little bit differently, but in ways that are good, in ways that, that fit with who we are, and just being able to live life. And the supervisor nods his head and says, I'm going to think about that, but yeah, I'll go ahead and take my hood off. And immediately he unsnaps it from the collar of the parka, and immediately there's some relief, and all that. Our head retains so much of the heat, right? And so the rest of the day is a little bit better. And the next day he comes in, he's still wearing the parka and the mittens and the boots, but not the hood. But he's got the hood with him. He's got it under his arm or in his pocket. And so people continue to just do their best to talk with him and get to know him. And so the guy who came to him, guy or gal who came to him to really confront him, maybe another day or two goes by, and they come back and say, how you doing? Thank you so much again for, taking your hood off. I just feel like we can all tell that it helped with your discomfort level, and it just seems to have helped with our everybody's mood and ability to communicate with each other. Thank you again so much for that. And the supervisor like, oh, thank you. I'm glad that I did it. Still kind of weird. It's kind of uncomfortable. So then now the guy or gal says to him, sir, would you please consider maybe taking the mittens off? I know when my hands get hot and sweaty, makes me grumpy. We just see you trying to work with mittens on, and you can hardly do anything. We see you holding pencils in your mittens to try to hit the right keys on the keyboard. And sir, wouldn't it be much easier if you took the mittens off? And I see you've got your hood in your pocket. Maybe you could put your mittens in your other pocket in your parka. They'll be right there. They'll be right there if you need them or want them. But wouldn't you feel better, sir, if you could really type on the keyboard and get things done quicker? And plus it releases some more heat. Those mittens they probably hold a lot of heat, and your hands probably get all sweaty. And the supervisor's like, I guess I'm ready to try that. So you get the idea, and over time, so now the guy from Alaska, the supervisor, now he's just wearing the boots, but he's still got his long pants on, jeans or whatever he's got on, and then he's wearing boots with shorts, but with a long sleeve shirt, and then he's wearing boots with shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and then but eventually there comes a point where he's leaving all the stuff from Alaska, all the clothing that he was wearing from Alaska, he's leaving all that at home. But maybe initially it's right there by the front door. Maybe initially it's hanging on the coat rack by the front door. The boots are right there on the floor by the front door. Because he needs to feel like he can access them quickly if he needs them again. Because you never know when things might get cold. And so, eventually he gets a big box, puts all his Alaska clothes in the box, or in some suitcase or something, and he puts it up in the attic. It's right there by the entrance to the attic where he can grab it quickly if he needs to. But over time, maybe as he lives in Hawaii for a while, other things get put up there. And lo and behold, the box from Alaska gets pushed or even shoved farther back into the attic where he knows it's still there. And it's still accessible. And he, if he's going to visit Alaska and visit family, it's right there. He can get it anytime he needs to, but he doesn't need it to be right there. So, I'm going to pause here. And so, eventually, the guy from Alaska, he's always going to be from Alaska. But there'll come a day where you'll hear him say to someone, on the phone or someone that he meets, and they say, "Oh, where are you from?" He might just say, "I'm from Hawaii." "Well, I'm originally from Alaska, but I'm from Hawaii now." So in other words, a little bit at a time, when we think about the change process, there's new things that we need to learn and do that are not things that we learned in childhood. They're not things that we grew up with necessarily. The toolbox that we carry with us into our adult life from childhood is incomplete. And so I shared that in another video using the metaphor of the treasure map. And so there's things that need to be written onto our treasure map that have never been written there before. Instructions, so to speak, that have to do with living life in a healthy manner, in a way that honors God and is respectful and healthy towards others, that we didn't learn in our childhood. So the guy from Alaska, of course, one of the biggest problems that we have, and that he had in the story, and that we struggle with, is our what I call just emotional loyalty to things from the past. We become super loyal to old habits and behaviors and attitudes and beliefs that we might be learning as an adult are not good and not healthy and not appropriate, especially in a new or different environment. It just wasn't appropriate for the man in the story to wear a parka all the time in Hawaii. It wasn't appropriate on a lot of different levels. And yet he had clearly become super loyal to that, and to that way of living, that way of behaving, that way of taking care of himself. Now in Alaska, you'd better wear a parka when it's 20 below outside. And people would look at you funny if you were wearing nothing but a Hawaiian shirt if it's 20 below outside. So we have to understand that the things that helped us the attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, the things that helped us to quote-unquote survive in our childhood, in our teenage years, may have been in many ways necessary, may have been in many ways appropriate, or at least at a minimum, it kind of represents the best that we could come up with as a child or a teenager to try to take care of ourselves, to try to take care of our unmet needs and our wants. And so those things, I don't want to shame you for the things that you had to do or felt that you had to do when you were growing up in order to get by, and in order to make life work. People do their best, especially when you're a child and maybe you're dealing with some really tough situations and maybe there's no one there to really guide you. And you're looking around, maybe you see the adults in your life handling things a certain way. You're going to latch on to something, even if it's not particularly healthy. And so people take on, a certain mode of acting and reacting based on the environment that they're in. And a lot of times the things that we grab a hold of actually work, even if they're unhealthy or destructive or disrespectful or in some way toxic to ourselves or others. A classic example would just be yelling and screaming. A child might learn to scream and yell because everyone else is, and so that's the only way to really even have a chance to be heard, or even have a chance to get your point across, or get someone's attention enough to make something happen. And so maybe people just don't fight fair, so they use a lot of put downs. And so put downs are used as a way to drive people away and kind of win the argument. Well, sometimes that really works, and so a child can learn to do that. Problem is, when they go off to college or start their own family or get a job or whatever, now they're in some new environments. Certainly in a school, they're in environments that aren't exactly like home, but the child is unable to separate those environments from the behavior. And in the story, the man was unable to separate. He believed that wearing the parka and the mittens and the boots and the hood, the thick parka, was vital for his survival, even in a new environment where clearly, and it is amazing, isn't it? I mean, in the story, you might have thought, is the guy stupid? I mean, of course he's going to realize he's burning up wearing those clothes. But that's how people are. Sometimes people literally just flat out don't even realize. They just don't realize how the old behaviors are making them miserable in the new environment. And it often requires someone to come along, hopefully respectfully and gently. I try to model that in the story so you could kind of hear a little bit of how that might be done. And so sometimes it requires somebody new to come along and point it out. Maybe repeatedly, maybe several persons need to come along and point it out. So that way, the person isn't just thinking, oh, it's just this one person, they're out to get me, but they start to kind of get a little bit of that feedback from multiple people. And again, the key is to do it respectfully and gently in pointing out how some old behaviors might not really be working anymore, might not really be necessary anymore. Sometimes it does take a good friend to point that out. And so this all has to do with the process of change, but one of the biggest obstacles to change is our understandable loyalty to some old behaviors and old attitudes and even old beliefs. But the loyalty is now just simply unhelpful. Really on a practical basis. It's not, I'm not here to judge someone's beliefs. Only God is the judge. But we understand, we get to a point hopefully where we can come to understand that it's just not helping. Not helping me anymore to cling to these old things. One of the biggest areas where old behaviors, how can I say this? It's kind of like they have deep roots. And they have deep roots in our emotions. There's a lot of fear about letting go of some old quote-unquote survival-based behaviors. We really are afraid if I let it go, I'm going to die. The guy from Alaska, in a sense, probably felt some of that kind of feeling deep down. If I take this off, I could die. This could be the end of me. And intellectually, a person can know, okay, that's not really true. But emotionally, it can feel that way. It's kind of like when people say, if I can't get a cigarette right now, I'm going to die. They know in their head that's not true. But emotionally, it sure feels like this will be the end of me if I can't get a cigarette, It's that same kind of thing. And so, where the old behaviors really get difficult to change and let go of, and then replace them with something new and different and better and healthier, is because when we were in survival mode, we were basically operating not only out of fear on sometimes a very visceral subconscious level of death, fear of death. If I don't yell and scream and get my needs met, then I'm going to just fade away, and I'm just going to wither away and die because no one's going to know I'm here anymore. It has to do with power and control. A big reason why it's so hard to change and let go is because it has become a power and control issue, whatever the behavior is. We feel, and we've been convinced, maybe through real experiences, that maybe we've tried to change the behavior in the past, and boy, we paid a high price for it, and maybe people took it as weakness and really tore us up after that. But it's the fear of losing control, that keeps us loyal. The fear of not having the power to overcome a perceived threat if we change the behavior. And again, it's an understandable fear, but nonetheless, it's still a fear that we have to realize is not rooted in truth 100%. Because in the new environment, what we will find is if I take the mittens off, there is actually a little bit of relief, and I'm actually able to get some work done better. Same with old behaviors. If I let go of having to control everything all the time, I'll find that my level of satisfaction as part of a team, whatever kind of team, increases almost instantly. And I'm able to actually be more interdependent with others rather than having to be controlling of others all the time. That interdependence becomes a blessing because, wow, I don't have to do it all. And it's not a life-threatening thing when someone else makes a mistake where I feel like, okay, I need to go back and maybe try to control some things now or get to where I'm actually having more influence, I should say. It's not life or death like our emotions are telling us that it is. Letting go of the old thing is almost never actually a life or death proposition, but it feels like it is. So we have to talk ourselves through it and get some support. And of course, as I've said before, we have to draw closer to the truth of God's faithfulness to us, that when we let go of control of some things, that God isn't forgetting about us, and He's not just letting us, become a victim of other people's controlling behaviors. I mean, the fact is, we still need to have some boundaries and even have some walls up. I'm going to do another video on what I call the castle metaphor, and I'll be sharing that. So we'll end with another piece of this puzzle that I think will kind of bring it together a little bit more. And I don't know what this is called, honestly. I saw it somewhere and I wrote it down, but you may have seen this where it's a triangle, it's flat at the bottom, and the apex, kind of like a pyramid, apex at the top. And if you take some horizontal lines and divide that triangle into 4 sections, so take 3 lines, divide it into 4 sections of equal height, you'll see that the top section is just the tip of the triangle. The next section is a little bit bigger and wider. There's more volume. The third section down is even wider. And then the fourth one, of course, is the biggest one. And so the top triangle represents the top, the very, the smallest piece at the top represents the things that I know that I know. The next section down represents the things that I think I know, or the things that I'm pretty sure that I know. The next section down, again, getting bigger as we go down, it represents all the things I know that I don't know. But the biggest section at the very bottom, and honestly, you would probably leave the bottom line off, actually, completely, and then just draw those sidelines, so to speak, all the way down to infinity almost. The bottom section represents all the things that I don't even know that I don't know. And if we think about it, the man from Alaska, he was operating out of the top two sections only, 100% exclusively out of the top two, and things he knew that he knew, and the things that he was pretty sure that he knew. But he was not learning anything new, which would have to come from the bottom two sections. The bottom two, so the third one is the things I know that I don't know. So he knew that he didn't know how to function in Hawaii, but he wasn't ready to go into that area of knowledge and learn some new things and take on some new things. And of course, when you get into that third section, immediately you become aware of more that you know that you don't know. The goal, of course, is to be in that third section so that you can add new information and new knowledge and new coping skills and new things that are healthy and good and right in God's eyes, so you can add those to the very top, the things that you know that you know. And as long as we're operating out of the top two sections, we're stagnant. We're standing still. In fact, we're really sinking down into a swamp, because when we only operate out of what we quote unquote know that we know, or out of what we think we know, then we're rigid at that point. And other people are going to experience us as being very rigid, being a know-it-all, being someone who's very controlling, someone who is not teachable and is not open to anything. People are going to experience us that way because we are just totally stuck in those top two sections. And so the baby steps of change really does start with challenging your loyalty to the old ways. I'm not saying it's easy. It starts with recognizing that you need to become teachable by realizing that, in order for me to grow as a person, and actually in order for me to keep my head above water, I've got to spend some time in that third zone of things that I know that I don't know. Start there. Let someone teach you about things that you know that you don't know. For some people, it's about relationships. Maybe you know that you really don't know much at all about communicating with people and how to handle different personality types and all these things. Let someone begin to teach you. Let someone begin to model some things for you. Let someone begin to just show you options for how to handle things. The next time your old ways want to just automatically come up in response to another human being, but now you have someone new teaching you, hey, here's some other options, and honestly some better options for how to handle these same old situations that come up again and again and again in day-to-day life. People who have been abused, of course, really struggle with this because their loyalty often is rooted in real fear of that they could lose their life if they give up their defenses and give up their self-protective habits, their self-protective ways. And so, you can't reason somebody out of their fear. So I just want to acknowledge that this is a process. This is a journey. There's no quick, easy answer. But the truth is, even people who've been abused, eventually, little by little, they too learn to take some baby steps, to do some new things, and to experience the joy of, handling a situation in a new way, in a better way, and then realizing, wow, that wasn't so bad after all, or wow, that didn't destroy me. Wow, that, I'm learning some things now. And so there's a lot of blessings that come from even little baby steps. Usually there's immediate blessings that can come about just from even the smallest changes. You don't have to wait 10 years to see anything good come from making a positive, healthy change in your life, no matter how small. At a minimum, let's say your old habit was screaming and yelling or using put downs. But today you decide to close your mouth and you're not going to say anything when somebody else is making you mad. Maybe you literally walk away. Well, when you lay your head down on your pillow tonight, you have the immediate blessing of, wow, I handled that in a healthy way. I'm proud of myself for that. I'm glad I did it that way. I can feel good about that. It feels weird, just like it felt weird for the guy from Alaska, It felt weird to wear shorts and flip-flops and a short sleeve shirt. Weird. But there's joy in it when you find those new adaptations to new environments that are healthy and appropriate and good. And so, God bless you in whatever goals you have for personal change. There's no straight path. It's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back for a long time, But find people who can support you in your healthy goals. Don't try to do it alone. Find people who share that same objective. Find someone who's been successful in it. And let them mentor you. Let them share from their mistakes and from their, how they handled the weirdness of change, And so that's it for now. Hope this has been a good thing for you. Check out my other videos and feel free to subscribe and like videos that really catch your eye. And definitely look forward to your comments, and we'll go from there.